Look in verse 7. Now we move on to what's called the test of our fellowship. I'm glad God puts test in here where we can kind of tangibly see where we're really at. Watch what he says in verse 7. But he says, now if we walk in the light as he is in the light. It's interesting, he didn't talk about how it enhanced our fellowship with him. He said we have fellowship one with another. And the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanseth us from all sins. In other words, here's how the Christian community of church works. If every individual in here that is saved is paying attention to where we're at, seeking to walk in the light, listen now, the more light we walk in individually, it comes out in how unified and how much fellowship we have corporately. When I preach out this passage sometimes in marriage conferences, I say, you know, it's kind of like a trichotomy, fellowship is. You got God at the point of that thing, and you got individuals on both corners. The more you walk in the light and fellowship, both of you working at both sides of the mountain, the closer you get to the top, the closer you get to each other. That's what he's saying here. The more my fellowship is enhanced this way, it comes out this way. Whew, help me, Jesus. Oh my, I might get in some trouble I can't get out of today. There's two ditches that come with a passage like this. We need to understand very clearly. Let me point them out to you if I could. We've already discovered that you and I are made aware of how deep our fellowship is with God based on the light that I'm walking in. Let me say this so everybody understands it. It is not the church's responsibility or another Christian's responsibility to accept us how we are or how we want to be. Sometimes God's youngins will make decisions to walk in darkness and they'll strut into church like, you know, you're going to accept that or I'm going to ram it down your throat. No. To ask another Christian to accept you walking in darkness is to ask them to choose the fellowship with you and not with him. No. If you choose to walk in darkness, or if it was me choosing to walk in darkness, what you ought to say to me is, I love you, you're going to walk with that one alone. I'm not agreeing with the position you're taking. I'm not agreeing with the behavior. I'm not going to sit around and fellowship with you over your error. You walk out by yourself. It's not worth me giving up my fellowship this way to have fellowship this way. Not worth it at all. But then as we walk together in light, guess what it builds inside of a church? Unity. We don't do that based on personalities or opinions. We do that based on what? The truth of the book, the God of light. As he calls us all into light and we walk in that light, it builds unity inside of a local assembly like this one. So ditch number one is I got to be careful as an individual. Nobody has to accept my bad behavior or should they be guilted into fellowshipping with me over the error that I choose to walk in. Ditch number two is this. If you ain't careful, you'll get so self-righteous and holy, you can't fellowship with nobody. I've seen that ditch as well. Right? There is something wrong with me as a Christian if I cannot have some fellowship with other believers. I mean, inside of a whole church, if I have the two-man posse, well, the only person I can find there good enough to fellowship with and do anything with is just one other person. Just we a dynamic duo of holiness. You're in the wrong church or there's something wrong with you. Right? And, it happens. I've seen it before in church so many times where people have that mentality. And here's what they'll kind of robe it or dress it up as if, well, I just live too clean and y'all are too dirty. Nah, you just full of yourself. And you're lying to yourself. And you ain't been in fellowship with God in so long you don't realize that if you were really in fellowship, you'd find enough about yourself. Now, if you feel like it, you ought to be able to point very directly to Scriptures and tell why that you can't. Most people that get that place never get there. And so there is this absolute, I'm talking about in-your-face kind of situation going on. So here's what we know. When we get saved, God is light. If we're going to fellowship with him, we got to come out of the darkness and walk in the light. The more we do, the more fellowship we have. And when we do that, as others inside the church do it, it bonds us together. We get closer and closer because we're fellowshipping around light and truth and righteousness